Hey, thanks so much for checking out the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore. I'm excited to have you here. I know it's been a while. I just can't commit to doing a podcast every single week. I wish I could. I love doing it. I just can't commit to it now that I'm serving as an assistant principal. I just have been having a very hard time carving out the time, but here we are today, so I'm excited. We're going to be talking about 5 ways to know it's time to leave. It's time to get the heck out of Dodge. It's one of those questions I get asked often as kind of a consultant these days, so I'm excited to get this off in the can, so to speak, and out to you guys because, again, it's a question a whole lot of coaches ask about the college, way more so at the high school level. Hey, when's the time? When should I move on? When should I get out of here? And so hopefully we'll be able to hit some of these areas and topics today. And some of you will press delete now because you're going to retire where you are. You never want to leave, and that's cool. And then some of you will dig this whole thing and contact me later. So whichever way it goes, I'm all good. So let's get to the intro.
You are listening to the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coach's Locker podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach4, that's at COACHFORE, and my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore. Now, let's get after it.
So yeah, to be honest with you, I kind of like to move around a little bit myself. I mean, I kind of grew up in a one-horse high school town and saw myself, I really wanted to coach one place forever. Kind of like my mentor to me at Fallbrook High School, my mentor there, Tom Pack, he was there for like 27 years, I believe, maybe 24 of them as the head varsity coach, athletic director for about 20, 22 years, something like that. And that's how I wanted to live out my career. But then, plans changed. I started working, and I realized, you know what? Not everybody has that kind of mindset. Not everybody loves being in one place for their whole career. So the longest, I graduated from college in 99, and so the last 20 years, the longest I've been in one place has been 5 years. Now, some of that's been my choice. Some of it's been not my choice, so to speak. We'll talk about a few of those different, decisions or whatever here. But I have found, 5 years, I've enjoyed being in one place for that long and then kind of moving on. And again, different reasons those things have happened, which I'll get into. But some people are, less than that, maybe 2-3 years, and they're just always moving. And sometimes it's because they're climbing a ladder. And sometimes they're just wanting to move and move around. And then there's others who, they'll do 35 years in one place, and that's awesome. I mean, I really believe God's created each one of us so differently, way different talents and abilities and all of that. And so because we've all been created differently with different mindsets and different talents and abilities and different makeups and all that, we're going to, have people all across the board there on what they want to do. But as I said earlier, as a job search consultant for both high school and college level coaches, this is a question I get asked all the time, starting at about now, starting in about middle of October, until about February or so, I get a lot of these. I get these sometimes from guys who are passed up at their own job, someplace they've been for maybe 4, 5, 10 years, and they got passed up for a job. They're like, do I stay here? How do I know when it's time to leave? So we're going to talk through 5 ways it might be time to move on. And these are just from my experience, not only as the employee who kind of went through some of this stuff, but also my experience in talking to different coaches nationwide on what they've been through. So it's a kind of a mix of both those things. But the number one reason I think you might know, hey, it's time to move on, is you're bored. You're simply bored. And, we could probably talk a whole podcast on what it means to be bored and what it means to, be stimulated in the workplace, whether you're a coach, a teacher, a coach and teacher, whatever you are. But sometimes we just get bored where we're at as human beings. And if there's not a lot of creativity in the workplace, maybe you're in a place where there's just not a lot of creativity and vision for the place to progress. And so, they're just kind of status quo, like a pond, right? I don't know the definition, but I think a pond is where there's nothing feeding it and no outlet, so it becomes, stagnant water. Maybe that's the case where you're at, but you're not being challenged where you are anymore. That usually leads to boredom if you're not being challenged. There are a variety of reasons, as I said, that a coach gets bored. Maybe it's the level of competition, which isn't stimulating you anymore. Maybe the football program or the wherever you're coaching, the insert program here, just isn't stimulating you. Maybe you've been coaching wide receivers in the same place for 6 or 7 years, and it's just kind of boring now. You've been running the same offense, not a lot of excitement in the day-to-day operations of your program. You're bored. It might be time to leave if you're bored. You're kind of going through the motions, but you're not having fun. And you feel like you're not making a difference in any facet of being a coach in that program. It might be time to move on. So, I think most of us these days, we want to be challenged. We want to be able to let our creative juices flow. If we're not challenged, if we can't let our creative juices flow, if we're just stagnant, then that puts us in a place of zero growth professionally. And from my experience, if you're not growing professionally, you'll get bored. If you're not challenged, you'll get bored. Listen, as I said earlier, I'm an assistant principal, my second year as an assistant principal, and there is so much I have to learn in this job. And so many unique challenges day to day, so many unique challenges just one year to the next. I can't be bored. I don't have time to be bored in this job now, I'll tell you that. But, my principal gave me a job this year. Wasn't real excited about taking over a certain area of campus. But it's stimulated me, because I'm the type of guy where I'm going to try to track down who are the best schools doing this, certain part of my campus. How can I grow professionally in this area? And my principal, who's a great person to work for, someone I highly respect, I think that's part of why he gave me this task, is because he knows it's an area I need to grow, okay? And because he's a great leader who's trying to develop great leaders, he sees it's an area I need to grow, and so he's put me in charge of it, and that's great leadership on his part. But if you're in an area where you're not challenged, if you're in an area where you're not allowed to grow, maybe you're not allowed to be challenged, and you're bored, then it might be time to move on. Okay, so you might be bored of hearing boring. You might be bored of hearing boredom. I don't know. But that's one way to know it might be time to move on, is just you're bored and it's time to go. A second reason, your vision is not being supported. Your vision for the program. So maybe you're a head coach. I know we're talking to a lot of different people, over 1,000 people that hear this, this podcast. You might be a head coach. You might be an athletic director. You might be, a freshman position coach at the high school level. Doesn't matter where you're at. You can still have vision, okay? And if your vision is not being supported, now obviously that large-scale vision more at the high school, head coach level is what I'm talking about. Because sometimes you might have a vision as an assistant that's not going to be supported because it doesn't match up the head coach's vision. And that's a whole nother story. But if you're in a place as a head coach, maybe as a coordinator, where your vision is not being supported, it might be time to go. This can happen to you as a head coach, as an assistant coach, it doesn't matter. Sometimes your vision is no longer being supported because the people above you have changed, and now there's new people, okay? So now those new people bring a whole new vision that changes your job dramatically. That might be the case. I don't know. Sometimes your vision is not being supported because you've been preaching the same thing for far too long. That message has become stale in the locker room. And so your vision from above is not being supported because you're not getting anywhere. When your vision is no longer supported, it might be time to go. Because what will happen if you don't go and your vision's not being supported, you'll become bitter. You will become sour towards your job. If you teach and coach in the same place, that bitterness will spill over to all facets of your job at that school. If your vision's not being supported as a coach, that mentality that you're bringing to your athletic program, your sports program, your team, my vision's not being supported, well, screw you, I'm not going to do a good job in the classroom. That's what some people do. Okay, it spills over. So what you need to ask yourself when your vision is not supported is, why is my vision not being supported? Okay, what's going on here? Then you need to determine if that's because of you or because of your supervisors. Again, if your vision is not being supported, you need to find out why. Why is my vision here? Why is my vision not being supported? And then you need to take that a step further. And these lead to usually it can be some very healthy conversations in the workplace. But then you got to figure out, okay, if it's not, is it because of me? Am I doing something wrong as the head coach, as a coordinator, as a position coach? Or is this my vision not being supported? Is that, big yawn. Is that solely on my administrators or my athletic director not supporting my vision? Because there's a big difference. If your vision isn't being supported above you, and it's because of you, then there might be some writing on the wall there that you're about to get fired. If your vision isn't being supported because your administration doesn't believe in your vision, again, there might be some writing on the wall there, and you might be on your way out, or you might be on the outs with your administration being able to trust you. So either way you come to the answer as to why your vision is not being supported needs to lead to some healthy discussions with your administration. Okay? I was an athletic director and a head football coach once at a school. Sorry, not head. I was a special teams coordinator and athletic director. And I kind of had a vision going there that I was going to do both things. And then, so I coached my first year there. We win a CIF championship. Again, I'm the special teams coordinator. First CIF championship in the school's history. Obviously, first in football's history. We had a great season. We had a great year in athletics. We won 6 league championships. In the 10 years before that, they had only won 3 league championships. We won 6 in my first full year there. I'd say we did a darn good job, right? Well, then my boss, my assistant principal, comes to me and says, hey, administration doesn't want you coaching anymore. So I was told, you're not allowed to be AD and assistant football coach anymore, varsity football coach. I said, why? My AP's like, Chris, I don't know. It was a discussion between the board and the principal. So it's above my head. I was really ticked because that's one reason I came to that school. When they had offered me the job and I had a couple opportunities elsewhere, I asked, because I really did want to coach still. And a lot of times here in California, as an AD, you're not allowed to coach anymore. And so that's one of the questions I asked. And they said, yeah, they said it was fine. And then, after 1 year, actually I was there about maybe 18 months at that time, but one whole school year, then they come and say, no, it's changed now. So my vision of being able to do both things, it changed overnight. But that vision of mine had nothing to do with me. That was above me. Well, I decided to stay anyway, okay? Because I was basically, told, hey, choose coaching football or being an AD. And I knew at the end of the day, I'd rather be an athletic director. So I stayed. I kept that job. And, I was there for a little while longer. And then we'll get into me leaving there pretty soon here. But so your vision not being supported, there's, two different ways that kind of happens. One is because you're not doing a good job and administration just doesn't believe in you anymore. Or two, a lot of times it's because there's been a changeover and they just don't believe in your vision. But either way there, if you want to go left and they say, we don't think you should go left, then a few weeks later you're saying, you know what, I think this is black, and they're saying, no, we're pretty sure it's white. If you have a vision for multiple sport athletes, but your admin says, nope, we don't want multiple sport athletes. We want kids to focus on one thing. Or maybe it's vice versa. You don't want to share athletes, and your administration's telling you to share athletes because they believe in multiple sport athletes, okay? Maybe it's going that way. Well, if your vision is not being supported, it might be a good time to go, okay? Number 3, you're not growing. You are not growing. A head coach I once worked for, Oak Hills High School, he's the head football coach there, worked for him in the 14-15 school year. He once told me, and I consider Coach Kistner a friend of mine, he once told me his philosophy in hiring coaches. He said, if I am the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And it's kind of funny, right? And that's not like a phrase he made up. But I love that philosophy of leadership. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I like that. Sometimes we stop growing as a coach because we simply aren't being challenged by anyone else on our staff. So Coach Kistner's words are good words there to take heed to and to listen to. Have you recently felt like you aren't getting any better as a coach? Like, you know what? I'm not growing. I'm not growing as a coach. If that's how you are seeing yourself, or maybe you're an athletic director and you're listening to this and you don't see yourself growing as an athletic administrator, or whatever it is. Maybe you coach and you're listening to this podcast because a friend shared it with you and you're in a financial business and you're not growing, okay? Whatever business you're in and listening to this, if you're not growing, kind of like we talked about earlier, if you're not growing, that's going to lead to boredom. That might be one reason you get bored. If you're not growing, you're going to get stagnant and you're going to get bitter. So maybe you have been in the same place for too long. Maybe you've been in a place for some time surrounded by all the same people and you stop growing. You don't feel that need to get better because you're getting by just fine as you are. And I think this actually is a big problem in coaching. I think it's a big problem. I think it's a disservice to kids. I think the unions, California Teacher Union, of which I was a part as a teacher, obviously, but I think they protect people and other unions protect people who haven't had any growth in years, and they're bad for kids. That happens. You have the same thing with administrators, okay, where the district protects them, and they haven't grown in years, and that's bad for kids. So when people get in this spot, they haven't read anything, seen anything, they haven't gotten any kind of professional growth conferences or opportunities for years and years and years, it might be better to move on, because as a coach, if you're thinking, I've got this all figured out, it might be time to go. It might be time to go. That's the third reason you aren't growing. It might be time to spread your wings and get out of there and grow. I've been in this situation before where I just felt like, you know what? I'm not going to grow any in this area, on this staff. I'm not going to grow. It's time for me to move on. And so we come to that as coaches sometimes. I talk to coaches all the time when they talk about like, hey, how important is it that I stay here more than a year or two, just for my resume? I don't want my resume to show a bunch of stops, but maybe this coach was fired, so I moved on and found another job, and then that coach, he was he just didn't retain me, so I moved on. Now I'm at my third place in 3 years, and I don't want to leave, but man, this coach, I'm not learning. I didn't learn a thing from him. I'm not going to learn anything if I stay here. Should I leave or should I stay? And again, how that resume reads is important. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to grow, if you're not able to grow where you are, you'll probably become bitter. It might be time to move on. You want to be in a place where you're challenged. You want to be in a place where growth, professional growth, is valued. Worked in one school district where they paid nothing for professional growth. They paid nothing for it. We had to pay everything out of pocket. They wouldn't even give us a day. Like, they wouldn't give me a district charge day. We had to put in our sick time. So not only do I have to pay everything out of pocket, but now I got to use a sick day to go. I got to lie because it's not a personal necessity day. I'm trying to get professional growth. Got to pay for it all in my pocket, and then I got to lie. Way to teach us. That's an awesome job right there. Teach us professionals to lie on the form. That's what the administrator told me. Oh, just lie. Just say you're sick, Otherwise, if you put something else out, they won't let you go. So, I mean, how bullish is that? That is just dumb, in my opinion, to do to people, to employees, So, look, I wish coaching had an unlimited amount of money. I wish we all got, some kind of professional growth opportunity given to us each and every year. Some districts, it just doesn't happen, But it's like, why can't administrators at least, okay, if the district can't pay for it, can site administration do anything to work with me to give me a sub for the day? That'd at least be nice, So, but if you're not in a place where you're able to grow, it might be a good time to move on up and move on out of there, because that growth is important to us as human beings. Number 4, things have changed, and this is what leads to a lot of job change, right? It happened to me back in 2014. I was once hired as an athletic director at a school that was being led by a superintendent who wanted to really make athletics great again. Before that slogan was made famous by Mr. Trump. But he wanted to make athletics something special. And the board wanted him to make athletics something special. So he said to me, my door is always open. If you need a solution to a frustration you have, come see me, Chris. He told me that my first day there. He calls me into my office. He gave me 3 jobs. Okay? And we had 3 items to discuss. One of them was that. One of them was social media on campus, and one of them was a concussion policy. So for me, developing a concussion management policy was easy. Developing a social media policy was easy. To me, the hard thing of that was, hey, if you don't like something you're told, come see me. If you're trying to do something, you get shut down by the principal or assistant superintendent, you come see me. Now, you and I both know that's a double-edged sword right there, boy. That is a double-edged sword. But I was fortunate. He doubled the budget, because I went to him. That's the first thing I went into him with. Said, hey, you want to have championship athletics here? This budget's not going to do it. And so I developed a brand new budget. I showed him that budget. He agreed with that budget with the extra expenditures. And so that was pretty cool, you know. And so just like that, the budget doubled. Just with a 5-minute meeting, the budget doubled. That was awesome. So they were doing some things to help me, which was great. As I said, they opened the pocketbook a little wider. They helped me to hire some great coaches. And we instilled a great vision for our athletic program there to have some immediate success and some long-standing success. And as I referred to earlier, after winning just 3 league championships in 10 years, we won 6 in my first year there. What changed? Nothing. Nothing but the vision of the superintendent down to me, down to my coaches. And I fired some who were just horrible. Some horrible coaches. I fired them. But we won 6 in my first year there. Then, pretty soon, everything changed. And the school, athletically, they've never rebounded from that. But it changed literally overnight. That superintendent who brought me in, he got fired. He's on CNN for something very stupid. He made a racist joke. He was a rodeo clown on the weekend. So if you want to Google it, Google rodeo clown superintendent fired, and it'll probably take you to that story. Oh, you're going to go rodeo clown superintendent Michelle Obama. So he makes a dumb joke on the weekend in his day job. It's not even his day job. You know, it's his weekend job. He makes a dumb joke at a rodeo, and that leads to him getting fired. And I get a call one day, hey, Chris, there's a couple news trucks outside of our school. What should I do? It's my basketball coach. And I said, do nothing. I'll be right there. Dropped what I was doing as a coach, ran up there as an AD, you know, changed hats in the car on the way up there, take off my coaching hat, put on my AD hat. But anyway, he gets fired, and it changed overnight because then our principal, the long story short is, superintendent gets fired, new superintendent brings in new principal, and she was from the elementary school background with 0 background in high school athletics. And so that went pretty bad. The principal who hired me got transferred out of there, and basically that's all she wrote. The new admin in place, right? Remember how that other superintendent told me, hey, if you get shut down, come see me. Well, I did that on 3 occasions, and it really pissed off the assistant superintendent. Well, now that superintendent wasn't there, the assistant superintendent had some power. She totally changed things kind of back to how they were and made sure that one of her new hires, the principal, made sure the principal had a firm grasp on everything. Principal brings me in, hey, shut door conversation. What's good, the bad, and the ugly here with athletics? You can trust me. What support do you need? Done a great job here. So I talked about 3 good things, 2 bad things, 1 ugly thing, right? And that was my idea. As she's asking me these things on the fly, I'm like, well, stay positive. So I listed the 3 good things, 2 bad things, 1 thing we needed to have changed right away. And, she ends up leaving the meeting and going right to that assistant superintendent. And the writing's on the wall. I'm toast. So I resigned, got out of there very quickly, as quick as I could, because everything changed. I mean, everything changed. Literally overnight, it went from, hey, we want to do everything we can to have a tremendous athletic program, to, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Severe micromanagement, budget cut back to what it was before. I knew we could not win in that environment like we had done in the past. And so we went from 3 league championships in 10 years to 6 league championships in my first full year there. And now that I've been gone, I think, let's see, 14, 15, 16, 17. I think 5 years. Well, no, probably 6 years. I don't think they've won 6 league championships in the last 6 years combined. So they fired a few of the other coaches I had brought on board who won and were doing things in a great positive way. But all of that, my own story I'm sharing there because things drastically changed overnight. So that's another reason it might be time to leave. When things change, especially a drastic change where now your vision's not being supported, you're bored, you're not going anywhere. When things change above you, it might be time to move on. Again, whether you're an assistant coach, Coach Joe hired you, brought you on 2 years ago, he's gone now. There's big rumors about a staff shakeup, or you met with the guy and you just don't like, the new guy, you just don't like him. Whatever it is, it might be time to go now after a drastic change, okay? So anytime there's a drastic change, sometimes it's a small change, it ends up being drastic. It might be time to go. It might be time to move on.
Hey guys, if you've never heard of Joe Daniel with Joe Daniel Football, you've got to check this out. He's got this awesome Halloween special going. 50% off of full access to all the Joe Daniel Football. That's JDFB, defensive systems. So go to 8laces.org, EIGHTLACES.org/defense. That's 8laces.org/defense. Listen to what Joe's going on.
Hey, what's up, Coach? My name's Joe Daniel from JoeDanielFootball.com, the Football Coaching Podcast Network. And I want to tell you about a special we've got going on right now for Halloween. Okay, it's going to be running through the rest of October, through October 31st. You can get 50% off your first month with any of our defensive coaching systems. You can only get that through October 31st, and you can only get it through the links that are down below. Pick out the system that you want. Now, you need your defense to give up fewer points, give up fewer yards, tighten up. You're getting into that crunch time of the season. Maybe you're trying to make the playoffs. Maybe you want to make sure that your team is ready to win that championship, or maybe you just want to salvage the rest of the year, get some positive momentum going into the offseason so that you can start to build for next year. Wherever you're at, the JDFB systems are going to help your defense to get better because you're putting in a lot of hard work, you're putting in a lot of effort, and you want to see better results on the field.
So go to 8laces.org/defense. Thanks.
Number 5, you are frustrated with your boss. That's another good time. That's another good time to go. It might be another good reason to leave. You're frustrated with your boss. When you lose faith and trust in your boss, you get frustrated. Or when he or she isn't communicating well with you, you get frustrated. There are times when you can work through frustration, and there are times when the relationship gets past the point of no return. Again, I've been in this situation. Anytime you've been in education and coaching for almost 20 years, you've been in these situations before. The superintendent, where I had been for 5 years, a small private school, that superintendent had 2 sons come through my program. She came into my office one Saturday afternoon while I was breaking down our next opponent, right? Sorry, it was a Sunday afternoon. I'm breaking down my next opponent, doing my regular scouting. This was in the old days, kids, before Huddle. This was on the VHS, the Cowboy remote, baby. If you know what I'm talking about, okay? The Cowboy remote, the VHS system, way before Huddle back in the day when scouting was a lot harder than now. If you don't know that old VHS system, or I guess this was VHS. This was VHS. 2003, baby. I was not even on the DVDs yet. DVDs came in 2004. Now, the old-timers are like, Fore, you don't know nothing, man. We were reel to reel, baby. So, but what I'm saying is scouting on the old VHS tape, much different than it is now in Huddle. We would have to, write down the time, remember to show that timestamp to your players. Make sure you don't hit that little button on the remote that sets the time all back to 0. So, man, you coaches these days, you got no idea how nice it is. If you've never had to scout on VHS or DVD, you have no idea how nice it is now. Being able to, last time I was a high school coach, we would watch, like most of you do, you watch every play of the season, every game of the season. I would watch, literally, if I'm in week 10, I'm going to watch every kickoff, all 9 weeks. I'm going to chart and watch every single kickoff for 9 weeks. I'm going to chart and watch every single punt for 9 weeks. That's just how I did things. I did that on the old VHS system. But now, man, whoa, it's so much harder, easier, so much of a time saver on Huddle. So there's my little Huddle rant. Boy, it seems like Huddle's pissing off a lot of people this year too. So that's, I was approached, and I'm not paid at all to say this, but I was approached. I've always been a Huddle fan. Trust me, it's a great system. They named me in 2017, named me, one of the top 100 coaches in America, something like this. And for me specifically, it was in the area of technology. So I hate to say it, but if Huddle's losing people or ticking you off, watch GameFilm360.com or watch360gamefilm.com, or maybe it's just watchgamefilm.com. Again, not a paid advertisement, but I checked it out. Might be worth checking out for you. Watchgamefilm.com. And that's not a paid advertisement deal. I was impressed with what they got going on. So anyway, this superintendent comes in. I'm breaking down film. It's the first time she had done such a thing where she comes in and says, hey, we need to chat about the football program. Now, again, she had a boy in my program at the time, but totally the wrong thing to do, in my opinion, breaking that chain of command. She should have talked to the principal or the AD. Now, I could tell she was frustrated. She was explaining things to me that she didn't like, that she was seeing in the program. I could also tell this wasn't coming just from her, but maybe a small group of parents also. But long story short, she went on to explain that she wasn't happy with how the coaching staff was holding kids accountable. She told me there's too much yelling. I totally disagreed with her. And I reminded her that the same staff has been here the last 5 or 6 years together. Now, I was a new head coach, but that same staff had been there for a long time together. I'll never forget the quote she gave me. There is something wrong in the mix, she said. We're going to have to reevaluate things at the end of the season. So I don't know what that was, if she was throwing down the gauntlet. But to me, the handwriting was on the wall right there. And so a fifth reason it might be time to go. You're frustrated with your boss. And a lot of times that might come because you sense that they're frustrated with you. So that 15-minute conversation and her last statement made it clear to me she no longer had confidence in my leadership. Although I had led each of my teams there to the playoffs, so you know what? I think I said earlier that was my first year as a head coach. It wasn't. It was my third. Including a semifinal run. So 3 years in a row, I led our team to the playoffs, including one semifinal. Now, when you just throw stats out there in a vacuum, they don't mean a whole lot. Is this a program went to the semifinals every year? You just got lucky? Because you went there again when you were the head coach? No. They had been in the semis 4 times in 35 years. And once was in 2002 when I was a varsity coordinator, and then once in 2004 when I was the varsity head coach. So, we had a pretty good run going on there. But I could tell she had not had total confidence in me. I went and discussed this conversation with the athletic director the next day. Interestingly enough to point out, the athletic director and superintendent were married. So that was a little bit of a hassle for me, to be honest with you. Good friends with the athletic director. Decent friends with the superintendent. But much better friends. I was much closer to the AD. I had known him since I was in high school, actually. But I went in and I told him, hey, look, man, if your wife, actually, I didn't use that language. I said superintendent. I never wanted to pit the personal thing with him. So I said, hey, if the superintendent is not happy, it might be time for me to go. I said, we're not on the same page. He told me, no, just stay. You're fine. Don't overreact. Let's just stay focused on the rest of the season. But I told him that day I was probably on my way out, because that conversation with the superintendent, I just didn't dig it. I didn't dig how she came in. I didn't dig how she told me these things need to change. Like, she wasn't around our, she didn't know what she was talking about, basically. Let's just call a spade, right? She didn't know what she was talking about. She came into me because of parent complaints to her. She should have taken those, like I said, down the ladder, not just skip rungs on the ladder and come to me. And that's the biggest headache that coaches have these days with admin. I get it, man. I hear stories all the time. There's some administration out there that they just don't trust and believe the people they hire. And that's how it was with this situation. So I told the AD, look, man, I appreciate you having my back, but at the end of the day, if the top person on this totem pole doesn't have my back, doesn't believe in me, it might be time to move on. And that's the conversation I had with her yesterday. So listen, I'm probably on my way out of here. I just want to give you a heads up. And a few weeks after the season, I gave them my resignation. Nobody asked for it, okay? But here's the other thing with that resignation specifically, okay, was I was a teacher, and I really, really wanted to become an athletic director. And so that might be a sixth reason here to add today. We'll do that. We'll change the title. 6 reasons. Like how I did that. The sixth reason, it might be time to move on from your job. The sixth reason, there's nowhere for you to go up. There's nowhere for you to go up. And that was my situation there as AD. As the teacher there. Teacher, head football coach. I loved being a head football coach, but I knew I wanted to be an AD someday. And as I said earlier, the superintendent at that school was married to the athletic director. And I had talks with him. He knew I wanted to be an AD one day. And so we had talks about that kind of stuff a lot of times. And he was a great man. Since has passed. God rest his soul. But a lot of you, if you're in Southern California, you probably know who I'm talking about. A longtime small school AD. Tremendous reputation, won a bunch of CIF championships as a softball coach. Then he went on to work in the CIF office and then passed away from cancer. Tremendous man, one of my mentors. So it was hard to go in and resign from that job because I really enjoyed the school. I really enjoyed working for him as an AD. But when we talk about, things change, we had 3 principals in 3 years. So the superintendent couldn't hire a principal that she ended up liking for the long run. So 3 principals in 3 years is not good. And then I lost, confidence in her. She lost confidence in me. So I lost confidence in her having my back. And then, as I said earlier, there was no room for me to move up the ladder. So you might be in a place where, maybe you're an offensive coordinator and like this head coach, he's going to die here. He's never leaving. And I get that question a lot as a consultant now, where guys are like, hey, this head coach is going nowhere. I've been to OC here for 2 years. Things are really going good. But should I leave? Because I really want to be a head coach. Well, you kind of just answered your question there, right? Like, if you want to move up the ladder, like that spot I was in, teacher, head football coach, I was there for 5 years as a teacher. I was there for 3 years as a head coach. So that's not a long time. 3 years as a head coach is not a long time. But I knew, now I was 30 years old, okay, and I had none of this experience as a consultant. I was a little cockier, and I'd done a really good job there as a head football coach, right? I think at the time I was second in career wins in just 3 years, so that tells you something about the place too. But as I said, I took a team to the playoff my first 3 years, went to the playoffs, one of those years in semifinals. So I thought it's going to be real easy. I'll go out and get another job. It'll be drop of a hat, right? And it kind of was, to be honest with you, because I'd done a good job. I had a decent resume at the time. I hadn't even been in this resume business, but I had a good reputation. So I had some offers. Once I put my name out there, I started getting some interviews and whatnot. And my wife and I actually, believe it or not, born and raised in California, both of us, but we were trying really hard to get out to Texas at the time. our baby was on the way, our firstborn, and we were like, I wanted to go to Texas. I wanted to go raise a family in Texas. God knows that's the best place on the planet to be a head football coach, right? And so I applied to a ton of jobs out there and realized, boy, as a California born and bred boy, it's going to be tough to get a job out there in Texas. And I wasn't certified at all to teach. I'd been at private schools, so I learned out there too. The private schools, they don't make as much as you make out here in California. You know, as an AD, I was making, you know, a lot of ADs make pretty good money at the private schools out here in California. So, but anyhow, I had 3 interviews out there in Texas, so that was good in the private sector. And then one of them, actually, I was a finalist. I got flown out there. First time my wife and I, check this out, first time my wife and I ever flown first class was out there, okay? So they flew us out first class. They put us in a hotel for 3 nights. I mean, the whole trip was first class. Put us in a hotel for 3 nights, arranged the best interview process still I've ever been through. Like, Texas don't mess around. Y'all know that. They had a whole day of interviews on campus. You know, I interviewed with a player committee, a parent committee, a teacher committee, an admin committee, a couple board members. You know, some of those were formal, some of them were informal meals. It was just an awesome day, y'all. The next day, they had me go meet with a real estate agent, drove my wife and I around town for half the day. And literally, I thought to myself that night, I'm like, look, I told my wife, they told us we might have a drive with a real estate agent tomorrow. If my first day, okay, actually, I think my second day was the interviews. My first day, they flew us in. The principal, AD, took me on a tour of campus, took me on a tour of town, and then we had some free time at our hotel, you know. And then the next day, I had this full round of interviews. And then the third day, it was like, all right, you're going to go meet with this real estate agent. And I told my wife that night, look, if I sucked in the interview process, if they're not moving on, they're going to cancel the real estate agent. That's what makes the most sense to me. So I got my hopes really up, right? When I get a call in the morning from the real estate agent, and then I call the AD, I'm like, hey, I'm going out with, I can't remember her name, but I'm going out with this real estate agent. Just want to make sure that, you know, I'm good to go. Y'all don't need me back at the school today or anything. I'm heading out with her for 4 or 5 hours right now. We're going to look at houses. And it was like, oh, yeah, Chris, absolutely, go do that. Excited to have you go look at some houses, blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking like, all right, this job is mine. And so I'm going off on a little tangent here, but just sharing about the job search process. So we go out, we look at a bunch of houses. We're like, man, we're blown away at what you can get in Texas compared to California. So we're getting stoked. Like, our price point, what you can get there compared to California, huge difference. We're looking at these big, beautiful brick houses, manicured lawns, couple, you know, 1 acre, 2 acres, a lot of room. It was beautiful. It was out there in the Carrollton, Texas area, if you're familiar with that area. So I'm thinking good. I'm feeling good. We have lunch with the principal. And then the AD takes me, the principal took me to the airport that night. He hugs my wife, hugs me. And then as he's hugging me, he goes, we need to talk. So he pulls me aside and he goes, are you ready to move to Texas? And I'm like, yes, this is my job. I'm like, yes, sir, I am. And he said, Chris, is your wife ready to move to Texas? I said, yes, sir, she is. We are dead set on this. I'm very excited. So I'm thinking right then and there, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to get the job offer right now, baby. This is mine. Let's go. He's like, all right, Chris, listen, it was great to meet you. And I want to tell you this. If it's your job, and then my heart just sank, right? And he's like, if it's your job, I expect you to be out here quick. You might have to move out here without your wife. We want to get things going. And so I'm just like, gosh, dang it. I thought he was going to offer me the job right there. But he doesn't offer me the job there. He says, you know, if it's your job, we still, you know, we got some talking to do and all this. And so at the end of the day, he's a man of his word. He said, I think this was a Wednesday. He said, I'm going to call you Friday either way. And he called me Friday. And he said, it's not your job. And that's a longer story as well. But, I'll tell you briefly. So on the airplane, my wife is sleeping. And I'm just like, I'm writing all this stuff down. Kind of what I need to do if I get there, right? I'm developing my plan. I'm pretty excited. The way he asked me, are you sure you want to move to Texas? I'm thinking this is going to be my job, right? And I had a great day of interviews. But, I'm a Christian man, and I felt like God telling me on that plane ride, it's not your job. I just felt like it. I just felt like I was excited. I'm writing all this stuff down, and I just keep, like, if you're a religious person or anything along those lines, if you pray, and I just felt like this uneasiness about it all of a sudden. And I felt like God just telling me, this is not my plan. This is not my plan. Be at peace with this. This is not my plan. So I stopped writing all my plans down. And I fell asleep like this. Like I fell asleep real fast, right? And then my wife wakes me up a little while later, and she's like, man, I'm surprised you're sleeping. You were so excited earlier. I said, yeah, I was. And she goes, what are you thinking about the job? And I said, babe, God's telling me this is not my job. It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. She's like, what? No way. You did so good. You just need to have confidence. You don't have confidence in yourself. Like, they loved you. Da, 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 da. And I said, babe, it's not my job. It's not going to be my job. So when the guy, Chris, I can't remember his last name, but awesome principal. This was in 2006. Chris calls me. I see his number on my phone. I answered it. And I said, Chris, listen, before you tell me anything, I just want to tell you, I don't have a peace about being this being my job. I don't think you're going to offer me the job, and I just want you to know I'm really bummed about that, but I'm okay with it because I want to do what God wants me to do. And he said, you know what, Chris? Man, that's amazing. And he said, you're right. It's not your job. We're going with the Texas guy. So there was a Texas guy there, I think 52-year-old, 53-year-old, born and bred in Texas his entire life. And he says to me, Chris, at the end of the day, I really think you being from California just hurt you here. And, you guys are just very much alike. And we didn't really have an overwhelming reason to hire you compared to just staying with a Texas guy who knows everything about Texas high school football. And he knows everything about, TAPS and the division. And, there'd be a learning curve with you. And I fully agree. I fully agree and understand and support that. And trust me, never was bitter about that at all. I told him that. I fully agree. A guy born and bred there, I don't have any problem losing to that guy, Now, so and they were 0-10, okay, that year before I took over. Well, I go to a program. I become the head football coach out here at a program in Southern California. They were 0-9. Well, we go 5-5. And then we lose 2 plays on the last play of the game. But we go 5-5 into the playoffs and had just a tremendous year. Well, he calls me in November and said, hey, man, I've been watching you still, and congratulations. He said, we did not win a game again this year, and we let our guy go. Chris, it looks like we made the wrong decision. So that was nice. That was a really, really nice phone call. Really nice for him to follow up that way with me, call me. Just, over and above really what he ever had. He never had to call me again. He didn't owe me nothing. But you can bet I was watching them too on Max Preps. I was. But so anyway, that was my chase to try to get out there to Texas. Long story on the side, but I would say it was this. What prompted me to leave that school was partly that conversation with the superintendent, but then partly also it was because I was never going to be able to move up into an AD job. And that job out in Texas was what I wanted to do, AD head football coach. And that's what I was applying to, a ton of AD jobs. And I had some interviews out here in Southern California, and then finally had one I became, took over a job there in South Orange County at Capistrano Valley Christian. And I was there for 5 years. So those are 6 reasons why it might be time to get out of Dodge, okay? Starting with the last one, you cannot move up the ladder. You're stuck. You cannot move up the ladder. Your life goals, your dream job, you're not going to get where you are. The 5th one we talked about, you're frustrated with your boss. The fourth one we talked about, a lot has changed. A lot of things have changed, and now it's time to leave. The third one, you're not growing as a coach. Second, we talked about your vision not being supported. And then number one, we talked about you're just bored. So there's 6 reasons. Folks, there are a list of probably 30 reasons, maybe 50 reasons it might be time to go. Those are kind of the top 6 as I sat down to write an article about this. And, those are 6 reasons that I have, that I've written about, and that I think I see come up the most often right there. Okay? We didn't talk about parents. We didn't talk about community. We didn't talk about your life situation. Maybe you're getting married and your wife has a great job in another state, or you're getting divorced and you now have all this freedom to move, or your kids are both graduated. Now you and your wife can move somewhere. We didn't talk about a lot of other things. But those are the top 6 that I see happen over and over. At the end of the day, some of those you can fight through and battle. It's funny. I got a message not too long ago on Twitter about a head coach said, dude, I'm on my 7th principal, man, in like 15 years. Why are you guys such morons, you guys being administrators? And he was teasing me. But so some things you can fight through. And then some of those things you just can't fight through. You have no control over. Like where at Linfield Christian, which I spoke about earlier, Scott Raftery as the AD, he was never going to leave as the AD. I was convinced of that. Now, so, I'm not going to get into it, but Linfield went through a bunch of turmoil and he ended up leaving. And the superintendent he was married to ended up leaving. So, if I would have stayed there like 4 or 5 more years, it would have come open. But I didn't have the patience to do that. I wanted to be an AD. So, anyhow, folks, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. You can go to 8laces.org/podcast to get my whole library of podcasts. I'm going to be hitting on some job change stuff, some resume, some cover letter, some interview tips, and all that stuff in the coming months as we're getting into that part of the season, something I'm very passionate about. And then we'll be, bringing on some guests as well to talk about their seasons that they've just wrapped as football coaches in the near future as those things happen. And I always like talking to, state champions along the way. So as folks start winning state championships, we might bring in some of those folks to help you learn how to better build your programs, etc. But, hey, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Coach Fore. That's the @ symbol, COACHFORE. My email, Chris, CHRS, at 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org. Thank you very much. Check out footballcoachingpodcast.com. Got a great lineup of speakers there. Again, footballcoachingpodcast.com. If you are in the area, if you need a resume, there's nobody out there better than what I do. I'll just brag about myself. Honestly, if you're still listening, thank you if you are. But we are the self-glossed, self-proclaimed national champion of resume writing. And I say that kind of jokingly, but honestly, I don't know anybody else in the business. I know one guy. in the business of writing resumes. He runs one of the big football coach, turnover. It's not Football Scoop, but it's the guy who owns Football Scoop. His brother runs one, and he does it. He's never been an athletic administrator. He's never been in a position to hire coaches. I have, so I know what they're looking for on the other side of these things. And I doubt he's written as many as I have, but I've been in the business now for a little while. I don't have to speak about it. You go read what coaches are saying about my resume development building process, 8laces.org. That's EIGHTLACES.org/resume. And you can read about what coaches all over the nation, college, high school levels have said about my resume building process. I highly doubt anybody in the coaching world gets the same results that I do with it. So, short little commercial there on my resume building process. It's now, I think it's $159 up from last year, because to be honest with you, supply and demand, my business, I get really overtaxed. My supply and demand has built that to where it is. So if you can't afford that, if you can't afford somebody to write your resume, help you to write and develop that resume to make an amazing resume, first of all, you're only going to have to spend that one time, and then you're going to know the secret that I have on building dynamite resumes. But if you don't, have those resources, and I get it, I understand it, you might want to check out some of the resources I have on CoachTube. Go to coachtube.com and type in, look for, Coach Fore, Chris Fore, and I've got some resources on there that might help you build a great championship resume as well. So thanks for listening. I wish you nothing but luck in your job search moving forward. Bye.